Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith finally suit back up in midnight green together? All that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in, my everydayers. I'm your host, Gino Camilleri, host of the Locked On Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. We are your only daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, going on 1,500 episodes coming up soon. And if you haven't subscribed to the show yet, make sure you do, because we have you covered every Monday through Friday after the games on Sunday and 365 days a year here on LOE. But on today's show, we're going to talk about the parity in the National Football League. The Eagles are coming off a bye week. If you took a step back and saw the state of the NFL, maybe things aren't as bad as we are making it here in Philadelphia. And that's a bonus because the Eagles are getting reinforcements. Some guys were coming off of the PUP list today. We're going to talk about that in Sidney Brown and Ainias Smith. But to start the show, we got to talk about the bad boys. And we're not talking about Will Smith and Martin Lawrence in what now, their fifth Bad Boys movie? No, we're talking about A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith. But before we do that, this episode is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. So if you're making this your first listen, you probably haven't heard, unless you've seen on Twitter, but James Palmer had reported that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to have A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith playing football on the same field for the first time in the Northern Hemisphere in the year 2024. The last time they took the field together was down in Brazil in week 1, and we know what happened after that. Going into week 2, all of a sudden, A.J. Brown, somebody who's had these soft tissue injuries in his career, it popped up once again. He tweaked his hamstring, and the Eagles, blessing in disguise, maybe, were able to get A.J. Brown fully healthy and get him back for this week 6 matchup against the Cleveland Browns. DeVonta Smith, we know he had to go through concussion protocol. He unfortunately did not get to practice prior to the bye week. Lane Johnson, though, he did practice. He was closer to a game-time decision than DeVonta Smith was. But good news is, as James Palmer said, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be full strength on the outside. Are they going to have Britton Covey? No, he's still on the IR. He does have that shoulder injury. He will be back in a bit. But the two elite guys up top, that's what matters. And why I want to talk about this is because let's talk about the elephant in the room. The passing game has been abysmal. Jalen Hurts in the air has been abysmal. Outside of that first game, has there been a game where they have been dominant throwing the football? Absolutely not. In that Saints game, they were dominant in like 14 minutes of play, 15 minutes of play, maybe a whole quarter. But 3/4 of that game, they weren't too good. That Atlanta Falcons game, they were moving the ball. But was it the same without AJ? I mean, heck, go back to last year. When DeVonta Smith is on the field, teams could just single him or double him and triple him rather, and just focus on that single receiver is what I was trying to say. Because clearly, Britton Covey wasn't a downfield threat. Jahan Dotson hasn't become a downfield threat. Paris Campbell hasn't become a downfield threat. Their downfield threat is A.J. Brown. And that makes DeVonta Smith's job a heck of a lot easier as well. Is he going to have the target share that he had in that second and third game before he got injured? No, he's not going to. He was on pace in that Saints game to have 12 to 15 catches. Now, when AJ comes back, those plays, they got to be more efficient. They got to be in like the 12 to 15 yard range, but that's what DeVonta's done well. The thing this Eagles team has been missing is that one-on-one separator downfield that Jalen Hurts trusts. And that's a big thing. Jalen Hurts takes time to really trust these guys that he's throwing to. A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, One of the great things about having them for multiple years and signing them through the tenure of Jalen Hurts' contract is that they're only going to get better year over year. And a lot of people say, oh, Jalen Hurts can only perform when he has elite receivers on the field. Well, so can a lot of other quarterbacks in the NFL. Frankly, if you look around the league, and we're going to talk about the parity, there's not many guys that are elevating the talent around them at this current state in the NFL. What is going to elevate this Eagles team is now adding to the Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert duo that has carried you along, held this boat afloat a little bit, kept you in games. Now you're going to have a chance to get this offense back on track. And what does that mean? You have to score 30 plus points a game. Minimum. At minimum, you have to. And why is that? Well, look at the first game and look at the rest of them. Green Bay was an utter shootout. You had to put up 34 points to win that football game. If you put up 34 in the rest of them, you're 4-0. Heck, the Saints, I mean, you only had to put up 15. Atlanta, you didn't even need to put up 30 to win that football game. Tampa, that's another story. Things got a little bit out of control. But the Tampa game was probably the most evident, not just this year, but last year, in the fact that if A.J. Brown isn't on the field, this team is going to struggle. Now, you have him back fully healthy. It has to stay that way. Because we're going to get into the talk about the parity and how teams line up when it comes to records. You're still in this thing. It's still so early. Your first game off the bye is going against Cleveland, a team that a team that's almost dead in the water. Their quarterback just cannot throw the football. They're coming into Lincoln Financial Field, a rested, healthy Eagles team going against A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith. A.J. hasn't played in over a month. DeVonta hasn't played in a couple weeks. If you don't think those guys are going to be chomping at the bit for this opportunity to put up major yards in the air, then you haven't watched this team enough. I have a good feeling about A.J. Brown this week. I have a really good feeling. When I saw him tweet, or put on Instagram rather, the Bruce Wayne looking at the Batman suit like he was getting ready to gear up and get back to action, you know he's going to be set out on a mission. And then you play the Giants. Like, what happens if you score 70 points in these next two games? Are those offensive woes that we were talking about in the last couple weeks, are those going to still be a talking point to us? I don't think so. And we've been really, really hard on Jalen Hurts. And to be honest, I'm getting sick of the people that say, like, he just can't play football. Like, that's so unfair to him. You've seen what he can do. Now, is he the guy that elevates the guys around him like we thought he was going to be? I don't think he's that player. I don't think he's the elite guy that we thought he was going to be. But is he a guy you can win with when you have really good talent around him? And we're talking about elite talent. We're talking about the bad boys here and DeVonta and AJ. Yeah, man, just put the ball on the money. Just put it on a spot. If you were able to step back and watch that Dallas Cowboys game on Sunday Night Football, very similar situation to the Philadelphia Eagles. Brandon Cooks, their number 2. He goes down on IR. All of a sudden, it's like, we're just going to target CeeDee Lamb, and the rest of the guys got to make the plays. But CeeDee Lamb is elite, and you could target him 100 times a game, and nobody's going to get upset about that. Same thing with A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith. Kellen Moore, if there are targets going elsewhere in this next game, I think we got to sit down and have a discussion with this whole coaching staff. But if you know what this team is built around, Nick Sirianni said it. In the air, it goes through AJ, DeVonta, and Dallas Goedert. Now, couple in Saquon Barkley, you can get back to that. What you were doing down in Brazil in the blink of an eye. Will it make Jalen more comfortable in the pocket? Hopefully. Will it make Jalen a little bit smarter in his decision-making, trying not to force it to guys like Paris Campbell and Jahan Dotson? Hopefully. But what it needs to do is just get this offense back on track and show this team where it belongs. Because once Lane Johnson is back in the rotation, you had that full offensive line. You guys are 2 weeks rested. There's no excuses coming out in this bye week. The bad boys are back. Things are going to be clicking. And they're not the only ones that are coming back healthy, folks. The Eagles announced that they got some guys coming off the PUP on top of, hey, Lane Johnson, he might be pretty good too. So having him back, come off the bye, we'll see how the Eagles do against the Cleveland Browns. But to continue on, We're talking the PUP list and who got elevated for the Philadelphia Eagles before we talk about the parity in the league. So come on back after this. This Monday episode of LOE is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has all the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. So to post your job for free, all you have to do is go to linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. This episode is also brought to you by our friends over at BetterHelp. Folks, what's something that scares you? I'm absolutely dreading the fact that it's Halloween. Growing up, I hated this holiday. And I hate more than anything, clowns. So if you share fear, no matter how big or small, there's one place that you can go to get a great tool to help you face your fears, and that is over at BetterHelp. Because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place, it's holding ourselves back. And I've benefited from therapy. Me, my wife, my good friends out here, we have all done it. And life has been great since we have got involved with therapy. I highly recommend it. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. All you have to do to overcome your fears with BetterHelp is visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNFL to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. And we thank BetterHelp for sponsoring the Locked On Eagles podcast. All right, my Locked On Eagles everydayers, thank you for joining us here once again on this Monday edition of the show. I'm your host, Gino Camilleri, as always, making us your first listen each and every day. And if you're not making us your first listen, it's probably because you are not subscribed to the show. So go ahead and smash that subscribe button, turn on the alerts so you're getting each episode every single day. And as soon as they come out after the game, and the next time we'll be talking post-game is after the Cleveland Browns game, where the Eagles are going to be healthy for once. And they are getting some reinforcements, not just in A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith, as reported by James Palmer, but the Philadelphia Eagles website officially tweeted out that safety Sidney Brown and wide receiver Ainias Smith have both been activated from the PUP list. Their windows are open to practice now. They have a 21-day window, and in that time, at any time, they can be activated to play football. And we've talked about the wide receivers. I'll mention just Ainias Smith, what he potentially could do if he does get that elevation on game day. I still think he's probably going to be a practice squad stash, maybe for later in the season. But how nice would it have been to potentially have a downfield threat like Ainias when nobody was separating deep these last couple games? Lou and I had high expectations of him coming out of the draft and how he could potentially be and challenge maybe for that third wide receiver role. We know that he had a rough camp. He sustains this injury. The last couple games of the preseason, he was starting to put it together, but maybe he goes out there and maybe gets one or two opportunities to hit his corner three, as we always say, and maybe you see him score a long touchdown at some point in this season, but more than likely he's going to be on the practice squad. Maybe they'll elevate him on game day. That is to be seen. But the bigger discussion is on Sidney Brown. Sidney Brown, we know he suffered that ACL injury late at the end of the 2023 season, and this has always been the timeline, according to everybody in that building, that he was going to come into this season, probably not be ready for the start of the year, go on PUP, and be ready to come off after the first quarter. And that's exactly how it kind of played out. So from a timeline perspective, it seems like that injury is healed up. On time, Sidney Brown has been doing a lot of off-field work. I mean, well into training camp. I mean, the first couple weeks he was doing off-field work off to the side, and he's been able to run for quite some time now, but getting to football shape, that's a lot different. But what can Sidney Brown do for this football team? Now, if you're thinking the second-year safety who had some up and down moments in his first season is going to come in here and all of a sudden be one of the Avengers, I would take a deep breath. But what he can do is he could be part of the reinforcements on the back end. He could be one of those change-up pitches to what Vic Fangio has been doing and or failing to do when it comes to matchups. He was asked in his press conference, that is Vic Fangio, about a week ago, if he would ever play Sidney Brown in man situations as opposed to just lining him up as a single high cover safety. And he said, yeah, he's open to that idea. And he absolutely should. That's what he did at Illinois. The Eagles tried to have him play in man last year, but there has to come a time when Sidney Brown or Reed Blankenship or Cooper DeJean or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, one of those guys plays well enough in the slot position that Avonte Maddox is no longer on the football field. Or Sidney Brown comes in and plays well enough that you go 3 safety looks until the cows come home. That was one of those things that Lou and I talked about. It was the running back wheel coming back and then potentially 3 safeties on defense. Those were the 2 things that we thought would happen when the coordinators came in. We saw the first one happen week 1 against Green Bay with Saquon. The Eagles have been limited in the safeties that they've been able to play. I mean, heck, Tristan McCollum in that Tampa Bay game was getting snaps because Reed Blankenship came out due to heat exhaustion. Sidney Brown flies across the football field. He's somebody that delivers hits coming downhill and can fill the alley when he hits his landmark. And hopefully that is one of the things he continues to learn going into year 2 is to become a better tackler. But what the Eagles need to do is get into a world where they're comfortable playing with enough guys on the back end that they can get out of this linebacker world where they're playing 2 linebackers and playing Avonte Maddox, excuse me. I combined DeVonta Smith and Avonte Maddox. That'll do it on this Monday. But the teams that you're going to be playing, I think we've seen the blueprint. I think the Tampa game was the blueprint in how to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. That play action game, they got to have guys that can cover sideline to sideline in the play action game. It was clear Nakobe Dean was out of his realm last week against Tampa. Same thing with Avonte Maddox. I truly believe Sidney Brown and his athleticism alone is going to allow this defense to be in a better position to make plays on the ball. Not just making tackles, not just potentially more pass breakups. I think he's due for a pick at some point. He got that one in that Arizona Cardinals game. I see one very similar to that coming sometime soon where he's playing as that poach safety. He gets a good read on it. Those plays that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was making in 2022, I'm envisioning them and talking them into reality right now with Sidney Brown. But the one thing that he can do is just tackle. This team has been horrific tackling. If he can come back and be the best tackler on defense, that really sets a tone that everybody else kind of has to step it up. Hey, we've been missing this guy for 4 weeks. He comes in and he looks better than all of us tackling who have been playing for 4 weeks. It's going to send a good message to that defense. And I think Vic Fangio, he's going to have these chips at his disposal now. DeJean's coming along. Sidney Brown's coming along. There are no excuses for him to play it vanilla. He has to get creative on that defensive side of the ball. It was clear he was outcoached in that regard in that Tampa Bay game. Outside of that Saints performance, which was a Hall of Fame worthy performance in terms of Eagles games from a defensive play call standpoint, Vic has called 1 good game out of 4. That's the reality. Does he have his guys? That's to be seen. This week, though, if he has all those guys at his disposal and Deshaun Watson is able to chuck that ball down the field, there's some serious problems with this defense that are going to have to be addressed. But on the bright side, having Sidney Brown come back, I think is a welcome addition. The investments that they've put in on the back end, the fruits of the labor, they're getting there. Howie Roseman did this in multiple off seasons. Now all those pieces are starting to come together. This is where the offense, we know they got to get back on track. The defense, more than anything, they have to set the tone. Maybe a big pick by Sidney Brown will help this offense out. Maybe a game-changing forced fumble, something along those lines. But having that athleticism element, that's where you kind of have to hang your hat with Sidney Brown and say, we're going to be a better football team come Sunday in the back seven because of that. And I want to talk on one more player coming back from injury. I mentioned him in the first segment. Lane Johnson. He wasn't on PUP. He just sustained that concussion, and he was a literal game time decision. He was de-elevated from potentially playing, I believe, the day before or the day of that game against Tampa. He's going to be fully healthy. This team, they're back from a personnel standpoint. Now, when it comes to the play, can they follow along with the parity that's going on in the NFL? Because if you watch during this bye week, there's no team that really wants to go and win the Super Bowl. So that's why we got to take a deep breath and relax. Because the NFL, it's a week-to-week league. And the Eagles, they might be the belle of the ball come Sunday. But we're going to talk about the parity in the NFL and how the Eagles are right in the mix of things, even after the bye week. So hang around. We'll be right back. Our Monday edition of LOE is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Hey, NFL fans, we're already a quarter of the way through the NFL season, and if you want to get in on the action and get a big return on your investment, go to FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So in the middle of a game, when you get that hunch, say you think Saquon Barkley is going to snag a touchdown on the ground, or maybe one of the bad boys, A.J. Brown or DeVonta Smith, is going to have one in the air, you can view live play-by-play and so much more with the latest stats on the same page where you place your bets. So to get started today, all you have to do, and this is guaranteed, is place a $5 bet. Your first $5 wager is going to get you 40% in bonus bets. What is that? $5 down and you get $200 guaranteed in bonus bets to bet on any sport. Football, NHL, MLB playoffs are going on. Soon the NBA is going to be back, so get in on the action today. Don't wait. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, my everydayers. Gino Camilleri, host of the Locked On Eagles podcast, here to finish up this Monday edition of the show. We talked about all of the guys coming back from injury, how the Eagles are going to be fully healthy coming off of this bye week. And I'm sure, just like us, we didn't have to watch the Eagles this week. I'm sure the Eagles players, they sat back, watched some of the NFL. I took in all of the games. And one of the things I can walk away confidently saying after this week is that there are no elite teams in the National Football League. In fact, there might not be any very good teams in the National Football League. There might be one or two, but it's hard pressed to come by. If you saw Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills in a performance against the Houston Texans, Josh went 9 for 30. If that happened in Philadelphia, I think Jalen Hurts would be run out of the National Football League. You look at Joe Burrow against Baltimore, has a big pick with 3 minutes remaining. They fall to 1-4. The Minnesota Vikings and Sam Darnold are 5-0. What is the NFL? It's a week-to-week league. That's exactly what it is. And that's why everybody who supports the Eagles think we have to take a step back and kind of look at what is going around in the NFL. How is this parity playing out? Well, if you look at the numbers, in the NFC, there's one team with 5 wins. In the entire NFL, there's one team with 5 wins, potentially 2 after the Chiefs play Monday Night Football. In the NFC, there's one team with 4 wins. That is the Washington Commanders. Shout out to them and Jaden Daniels. Looks like the NFC East is going to be a little bit more fun. And there's 2 teams in the entirety of the league that have 4 wins, the Houston Texans being the other team. Besides that, there's 7 teams in the NFC that have 3 wins, 10 teams in the entirety of the NFL that have 3 wins. And that brings us to 14 teams, potentially 15 if the Saints were to win tonight, Not even half of the league has 3 wins through 5 weeks. Think about that. As bad as things are at 2-2, and as poorly as they have gone, half of the league doesn't even have more than 2 wins. What should that tell you? It should tell you that we really don't know anything about this week-to-week league. Did we expect Jaden Daniels to be as good as he is, bringing Washington to 4-1? I don't think so. Did we expect Sam Darnold to do what he is doing with that coaching staff and Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores to bring them to 5-0? I don't think any of us expected that either. Did a lot of us expect Joe Burrow and that Cincinnati Bengals team to be a 1-4 football team and the worst in the AFC North as it stands? I don't think so. And you could do this with every single division. You could go around to every single division and point to a team. San Francisco, 2-3. 2-3. Are things really that bad? In this season, I would say no. In seasons past, maybe. But right now, as it stands, who's the best team in the league? I don't know. Are you going to put all your chips in on that 5-0 Vikings team? I think they continue to play well. I think it levels out at some point. Is Kansas City going to get back to form? We'll see if they go and trade for a wide receiver without Rashee Rice in the mix now. The Buffalo Bills had 2 awful performances against 2 of the good teams in the AFC. Who is the best team? Not even the AFC. Let's look at the NFC. Who is it? If I had to say right now, I would say Detroit. But even they only have 3 wins. Also on the bye week. Take that into account. But this isn't a season, and this is still very early to be saying this, that you have to panic right now. And I think a lot of us have, and personally I have too. We just need to take this week-to-week league as it is. Because you're going to be playing Cleveland, and you're going to be playing the Giants, and you're going to have an opportunity to play those teams in the AFC North. You got the Panthers. There are opportunities on the board to beat teams that you should beat. But at the same time, are there any teams that you're walking into that stadium and saying there's no way that we can win this game? Well, if they played like they did against Tampa, probably. But if they play the way that we know that they can, and when I say that, it's the Green Bay offense mixed with the Saints defense. If they can get those 2 performances and combine them for 60 minutes, any given Sunday. It's a corny cliche, but it's so true. It's so true, especially in this NFL. There is not a team that you're saying, wow, look at them. Look at what they're doing. Probably Minnesota is that team right now just because of the circumstances. But I mean, look, the Giants going to Seattle. They upset them yesterday. It's the upsets are happening all of the time. It's almost like college football right now where you see 5 teams in the top 25 lose for the first time in years. I mean, literally, I think since 2007, that's the first time since that happened. Parity in football is all the way back. It's all the way back. And what are the circumstances surrounding that? I think teams are finding new ways to get the upper hand. Some teams are ahead of the 8 ball, while some teams are lagging behind. But that's the beauty of a salary cap NFL, where you can't just say the Eagles are going to go 17-0, they're going to get the 1 seed, they're going to win the Super Bowl. It's not like the NBA. I know we've used that Golden State analogy at times to compare them to the Eagles offense, like when they were really, really good with that Kevin Durant team. You knew that that team was a 1 seed every single season they were together. Do you know that in the NFL? Outside of Kansas City, I don't think you can guarantee it. So let's breathe in, breathe out, and just relax. We got 4 more shows for you this week, breaking down everything Eagles-Browns, and we're going to have actual football to talk about in just a few more days. We got Crossover Thursday coming up for you in a little bit as well. Lou and I will be back to continue on breaking down this discussion of the Eagles and Browns. But I just wanted to get back into the mix, dip our toe back into the waters of the NFL. A.J. Brown, DeVonta Smith are coming back. Sidney Brown, Ainias Smith off of the PUP. And parity is at an all-time high in the NFL. And if you like this show, make sure you go ahead and subscribe right at the bottom of the screen or wherever you're listening to your podcast. And I just want to say thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. And now for your second listen, make sure you go and check out the brand new Locked On NFL with 2 shows each and every day. First, the Madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. I'm also on that Monday show in the mornings with Tyler, so you can check me out there. And then make sure you check out the Barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure you subscribe, download all the Locked On shows. Make sure you're checking us out YouTube, wherever you get your shows, on Locked On Eagles, on Twitter at GC24_football. But that'll do it for this Monday edition of Locked On Eagles. I thank you as always, and I'll end you with this, as I always do. Fly, Eagles, fly.